Good morning, everybody. We are live. It is all happening. It is Monday morning on cliffcentral.com. Here is Leigh-Ann Mole. Is that coffee or tea? What do we got there? Is that
definitely tea?
It's not a witch's brew, huh?
What does that have in it?
I don't know. I mean, you would know. You go to that what is it, monthly witch meeting that you go to, right?
It's green tea, which some people might call a witch's brew.
Okay. All right. Well, if you've got a witch's brew, then all is well.
Puppy dog's tails. What did they say?
Yeah, snakes and snails and puppy dog's tails. Yes.
Can you imagine?
First thing on a Monday morning. That's great. Witches. All right.
Hello, Alice.
I know, little Alice. She's demanding to be on my lap more and more, which is irritating. So what can I do?
They are companion dogs, you know.
No, I know. I'm being a mean, grumpy old man, which I'm becoming increasingly good at, I've got to tell you, without even trying. I wake up some days and I don't even have to think about it. It just happens. It's great. How's your weekend?
It was good. It was good from a work perspective for me because I procured 3 new clients.
Ooh,
so
very nice.
I'm certainly not going to buy any fur coats at the end of the month.
Oh, is that was on your shopping list? Fur coats.
Yeah, but no, it's all good. Heading in the right direction.
Excellent. Prosperity awaits. If you did suddenly bring in like a huge amount of money, what would be the first thing you'd treat yourself to?
Okay, so in other words, not fixing things that are broken, a treat.
No. You can't have no boring answers. This is going to be like something that you would do just for you, even if it's going to dinner with the 4 people that you like the most or whatever. It can't be boring things like, oh, love, the geyser in the kitchen needed a replacement in the element or whatever. So I want to hear that.
Yeah. I'd probably put together like a really cool dinner for people at home. Okay. Yeah, so do like a whole cooking thing and use that truffle slicer of mine for some proper truffles.
Yes. I mean, really, that's something that we've been waiting for.
Yeah, that's what I'd probably do. That would be cool.
Oh, that could be good. I had a very good weekend. I was quiet and chilled on the Friday. Didn't do anything too loud and exhausting. And then on Saturday night, there was a birthday party for a friend of mine. He invited 100 people to his house. 100. I think in the end about 80 came, which is huge, right? That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like a wedding.
And well, he's got this huge big house. I don't even know if it's his, but he lives there, and it's just. I think he's just a squatter. I think it's actually someone else's house, and he just like moved in, and now they can't get him out. Anyway, it was really good.
Was it a special birthday, like a?
I think it was. I think it was a big round number. I think it was 40. I think it was his 40th. Anyway, It was great, and it was a proper blowout. Like I Ubered there and back, thank God. But it was just a big night. So it took me the whole day yesterday to recover. You know, the problem is like hangovers just last a lot longer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and, I do know what you mean.
I don't have the kind of the strength that I used to for these things. I'm not saying I'm tired and old, but it takes you a longer time to get back to like your normal settings, right? That's when you know. But otherwise, very good. Things seem to be, and again, I don't want to like jump the gun on this. Things seem to be getting a little more spring and summery. I hear lots more birds early in the morning. I see the sun coming up a bit earlier in the day. It's still not at like 6 o'clock when we start the show, but it's getting there. It's getting there, and it's exciting. That's my favorite thing about this time of year. And what else can I tell you? It was just nice to kind of be a bit lazy this weekend. I had a nice late morning yesterday morning and on Saturday morning. Didn't have to get up in a hurry. Didn't have a ton of things to do. You know what I haven't done in a couple of days? And I've realized, like, I haven't been to the shops, right? And if you haven't
What have
been
you
to the
been
shops for a long
living
time,
on?
well, you can always find stuff. Like, you forage around in your house and you'd be surprised at what you can find. Like I found stuff in my pantry that, well, none of it was expired or anything gross like that. But it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I could still use this. And if you don't need to go to the shops, I mean, or you're just too lazy to go. Frankly, that's probably the reason. And you find something. I mean, what did I find? I found a packet of something, like a soup or something, and I was like, okay, this will work, and it was fine. You know,
And there's also ordering online now as well.
I know, it's so easy. I often wonder, like, if you go on the roads on a Sunday, you actually see more like delivery guys on bikes than you see cars.
Hugely. I
Right?
find it used to be traditionally and very much many years ago during apartheid South Africa that your domestic worker would have the Thursday off for some reason. I don't remember why. The Thursday nights.
Yeah, there used to be something like that. I don't know if it was Thursdays, one of the nights of the week. Anyway, yeah, and then that was the night when people ate out or when they
Yeah, and it's kind of
ordered in.
stuck now. And if I listen on a Thursday night, it's a continuous buzz of delivery vehicles. It's crazy.
I imagine you lying under the blankets just listening for delivery vehicles.
Wishing it was mine, wondering what they're eating.
Yeah. Dr. Robbins says that they celebrated her Mr. Dr. Robbins' 50th this weekend. He had a blast in a kilt, and I'm still exhausted. Well, it was an interesting thing. There was an age range at this party that I was at. There were probably some people in their mid-20s, and there were probably some people in their 60s. There was one guy who, I think he was 70-something. And it was just a nice spread of people, all kind of just having a good time. It was just fun. I mean, like, there was dancing and there was music and there was, fires going. It was nice.
Jeez,
it was really
think
cool.
About 2 years back, there was none of that happening.
Funnily enough, this guy did not let the lockdowns get to him either.
Oh, really?
No. I think he single-handedly kept the whole of Joburg going in terms of entertainment during that time. So, did you see the Zulu wedding over the weekend?
I saw bits of it. It's not something that I diarized to watch.
I saw bits of it on Instagram because I follow King Misuzulu's account. Well, I think it's his. Either way, it seems to be operated by someone who's there. Because, I mean, it's not like it's someone. He's got someone filming stuff, and then they put all this stuff on, and I was like, wow, what is this? What's going on? And it was his wedding. It's a very, very cool thing. It was really interesting to see all the ceremonial outfits and kind of all these people gathered and the singing and the chanting and the praising and all of that stuff. It was really interesting. I mean, like, I've always been into that stuff, so I was watching it like, I was addicted. But there was a lot of interesting stuff.
It's not something that you'd see white people going to the ceremony. And certainly from the footage, you don't see much of it in the crowd. But there was a woman she traveled all the way from Gauteng.
Mm-hmm.
And this white woman decided that she wanted to be Misuzulu's first white Zulu queen. And she went all dressed up with a beaded shawl on and beaded headgear, very pleased with herself. And she was obviously quite popular with the media, so they all flocked to her. And she said straight out, she said, I just think that if he's looking, I heard that the king's going to come here today, she said, so I wondered, maybe he's looking for a wife. I don't know if he's going to watch this. He must just know that I'm here and I want to be the first white queen of South Africa, the first white Zulu queen.
Stupid. You see, it's the media. Because of the media, I was confused because everybody's correcting me here and saying it was his coronation, which makes sense, not his wedding, because they didn't have any kind of official, ceremony when he took over. So this was what that was. But
and it's been
again,
after
the media, see, because of this white woman who tried to make the story about her, I thought it was a wedding. So it wasn't.
No,
it was
so
actually
he was taking the throne. There's been a long, bitter battle for the Zulu crown, and
right.
He's finally taking the throne. But yeah, she seemed quite cheerful and jolly and keen on picking up a husband and a king.
Wow. Okay, well, I mean, let's see how that goes. But, it is the media. They're obsessed with these kinds of stories. So I'd rather have just seen the coronation stuff, and that would have been enough for me. But clearly, some people want there's got to be some white woman who steals the thunder here. Has to be a Karen.
Well, she was received quite well on Twitter. Zinyana Lembuzi said, "That's why I like whites. They don't beat around the bush. They go straight to the point."
Well, I'm sure that there are lots of women who would go straight to the point to be the queen. You see people doing this in countries all over the world. You remember how many people were throwing themselves at Jacob Zuma when he was president? There were white women and black women. Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, come on, if you just let us, just give us a bit of access, and then we would we'd charm the king, we'd charm the president, we'd win this person over."
Depends on what the benefits are. I'd like to know what they are first.
Yeah, you want to know what you're in for, right? Also, where are you going to live? How does that whole thing work? Are you the first, second, third wife? How does it all start?
These things are important.
The Tyron one says started doing 6 a.m. runs from this morning. Listening live today. That's nice.
Ooh.
As long as the runs that you're talking about aren't the ones where you've got the runs, because if you've got a 6 a.m., if you start the runs at 6 a.m. every morning, you've got a your body has worked out everything to the second, right? Amazing.
Oh, geez, yeah. So hopefully you're doing the running and not anything else.
Yeah, I can't imagine anything harder than waking up and going for a run. Oof. First thing, don't get it. I've got one or two friends who do this, and I have huge admiration for it, but the admiration doesn't go so far that I would ever wish to copy their behavior. The admiration ends with me going, "Wow, that's amazing." Nothing else. Right?
Yeah, I've definitely, even in the days when I was quite religious about exercising, would never occur in the morning. It would always occur later on.
Oh, no. So there was a thing going on in the office the other day after I'd interviewed that guy, Johan Hari, about stolen focus. How much time we spend on our phones. And everybody was comparing their amount of screen time. And I realized that I think mine was about 4 hours a day, which is a lot. I thought it was much less. So I got a shock. I realized, if I'm spending 4 hours a day looking at that thing, I can spend an hour and a half doing some exercise, compared.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, a lot of it is work," but not most of it. Like, most of it isn't work. I
can argue for that. With social media being my business, my alerts go off all day long and I'm checking everything that's happening. My phone is just an extension of my hand. So I certainly clock more than 4 hours.
Do you? What do you think your minimum is?
I've seen it once during COVID. I saw it said your screen time was up by 80% or whatever to 10 hours.
Oh, Jesus. That's horrible. That's horrible.
Because we weren't doing anything else but connecting via our phones. So,
yeah. Well, Leigh-Ann has got 4 stories for us this morning that all piss me off.
Oh, no.
No, they're all irritating. So I'm gonna go through. We'll get to the details of each one, but I just want to point out, fake meat is one of the stories, right? Which we've kind of spoken about. I said I bought that packet of sausages or something once, and then when I got home, I saw, oh no, hang on, these are not made of meat, and I was horrified. I was like, you've lied to me. So we'll get into the fake meat thing in a moment, but I'm sick of being told by other people what I should and shouldn't eat. And especially by governments and by Bill Gates. Fuck off. Don't tell me what to eat. Don't you dare. Right?
What's Bill Gates doing telling us what to
What's he
eat,
doing?
honestly?
Right. Exactly. So that's the one. The other one is this Melbourne teen who claims to identify as a cat.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I knew this was always going to be the next stage of this crazy, messed up, self-absorbed, navel-gazing bullshit. But we'll get to that just now. I know it's going to piss off a lot of our listeners as much as it will you and me. Well, maybe not you, but me. And then 1 million square feet of Los Angeles roads are being covered with a solar reflective paint. So supposedly, this stuff will generate some electricity, maybe enough to charge your phone for a day, you know? But they're doing this because it's all like, let's just show how much we care, even if it makes no difference, even if it's just pure self absorbed vanity. And
you're not feeling the Ubuntu on this one.
No. I think this is dumb. And where do you want to start? Because all three of these piss me off. The other one wasn't really. The other one's about that dude who ran the comrades in his rugby boots. But I mean, that's just stupid. But it's not irritating like these three things are.
Okay, let's start with the least irritating. You'll feel better about this.
Okay,
and that's the fake meat thing. It's not about eating it or being told what to eat.
All right. Because all over the world they're trying to do this, right? There's a little town in England that has now declared itself vegan. Now, I didn't know that towns actually ate. I thought people ate. But it seems the municipality, as in the town council of this little town in England, they have decided that they're vegan. So it's on my mind. I actually read the story just last night when I was going to sleep. And I thought, oh, so what? The people who live there in their town, we are very good people. We don't eat any meat. Of course, they can sneak out of their town and go to the town next door and have as much steak as they want.
I mean, it really pisses off some people. It pushes a button. There's a series in the UK called The Bridge, where you have to physically build a bridge of rafts over 100 feet to win £200,000. And the one competitor on there says it's all about community living and all of that as well. It's communal living, rather. And he says he's a truck driver from Wales. And he says, I just don't like people with really strong beliefs. And the interviewer says, what do you mean? And he said, well, like vegans. And that was his whole list.
Yeah, well, there we go.
So what's happened here is that it's all about what the food's called. And now you've been a victim of this. You went and bought something that said sausage. Yeah. And you got home and it wasn't.
Right.
Yes. So any plant-based foods that are labeled as like vegan biltong, vegan sausages, they were just going to be removed from all shelves in South Africa today.
Good.
But a court interdict on Friday is preventing that. So it was an order by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, Rural Development. They outlawed plant-based foods or meat analogs that use product names reserved for processed meat products. So you can't say things like biltong mince, patties.
Good.
That sort of thing. You've got to call it something else. You can't say plant-based meatballs or anything like that. But it's all been sorted out, and apparently there won't be this mass seizure of plant-based foods today. The council that was involved, I'm sure that you would be excited to be part of, is the South African Vegan Society, SAVS.
Oh, can you imagine those meetings? Oh, just the kind of people who need to, excuse me, can I say something? Because it's going to be everyone in that room is going to need to talk about their veganism and how great they are. Oh.
There's also Pro Veg International, a food awareness
pro-veg.
organization.
Oh, can you imagine having a little badge in your jacket for being a pro-veg international member?
It's
Oh,
definitely it's a head of broccoli with a smile on its face.
ugh. I just know what kind of people I'd meet at a pro-veg international meeting. And they would be
And you
exactly
know,
the kind of people I would not get along with. Exactly.
the thing is, I don't mind vegetarian or vegan food. I often eat just vegetables, or
Sure.
like a stir-fry noodle thing, or I don't have anything against it. It's
The problem is
just when
that
people
okay, so vegetarians, different story. There are lots of people throughout my life who've been vegetarian. They prefer not to eat red meat, which is perfect. I mean, good for you. You know, a lot of people in South Africa eat too much red meat. We get high cholesterol. Lots of people are suffering from that kind of thing. So
and
maybe
gout.
many more of us should be eating less meat. Fine, but the vegans, the ones who cut out everything that's animal based, those ones, they can't just leave it alone and do their own thing. They have to, first of all, tell everyone they're doing it, because that's the whole point of being a vegan. Otherwise, if nobody knows you're a vegan, what's the point of being a vegan? Because if you can't tell everyone how great you are for being a vegan, then don't bother doing it. Just eat what everyone else is eating. They don't. I've never met a vegan who doesn't announce it within moments. And I don't mean only when you go out for dinner, because if you go out for dinner with vegans, which thankfully I haven't done that many times in my life, obviously then you have to choose a place where they can eat. So you need to know that in advance. But I'm talking about just being around them. Like you could be in a boardroom having a meeting with someone. No one's eating. Food is an hour or three away. No one's thinking about food except the vegan needs to tell you out of nowhere because no one asked. But actually now I'm a vegan. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's very similar to, sorry to say, to Christianity. That happens a lot. And CrossFit, that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point.
Runners.
Right. You know,
Um,
it's all good and well. Like, so if you want to do that stuff, that's absolutely fine. Go ahead and do it. But you talk about it once, and I don't believe you anymore. I don't believe you've got good intentions. I think you're doing it because you want social credit. You want people to give you points. And Vyasan says he
mm,
bought a mutton curry pie, and it had chunks of soya in it. What the fuck? Yeah, you see,
oh,
false advertising. That is disgusting.
uh,
Parallel Parking says,
yeah.
Vyasan, that sounds like woke food. You have to ask first if the food is woke or not. If it's not woke, it will be real meat. Yeah, and all these stories have some element of woke to them, which we'll get, the other two we'll get to in a second. But Sanela says, speaking of fake meat, here's a story. There's beef in the SA hip hop world again. A guy called Big Zulu released a diss track dissing everyone and then bigged up everyone at the end. So I guess that's fake beef. Well, yes, okay. I haven't heard anything about that, but it sounds like it's a marketing ploy. Then that's very clever. So start creating beef between you and other singers, and you will get attention, like Big Zulu's getting this morning on the show. Kapamba says, I eat twice as much meat a day just to offset the vegetarians and vegans. I'm doing my bit for humanity. Good for you. I'm doing the same. Last week, I had twice in the week, I made only a meat lunch. I didn't have anything else but meat for lunch. I didn't.
A meat lunch.
A meat lunch. I was very
That
proud of
reminds me of when we went to that Asian restaurant with Damon, and there was a lot of meat, and
Oh
he
my
got the
god!
meat
Yeah, yeah.
sweats
He got the meat sweats. That was called. It
from
was
our
called.
meat lunch.
I think it was Kong, and
Yes, that's
they
right.
had this like fusion Asian and braai kind of thing going, and it was, I mean, really good food. But
Yeah,
his eyes popped out of his head. Of course, half the reason he was so excited was because he wasn't paying.
of
So
course.
he just kept ordering, and he ordered so much meat that he started getting what is called the meat sweats. He and he was sitting there with like really bad indigestion, and
So uncomfortable.
and couldn't understand why after we'd watched him empty
Beef
tureens
stir
of
fries.
just every kind of animal product. He was like the opposite of a vegan that day. And then he sits there wondering why. He's like, oh, like making all these noises the whole time and sweating on his forehead. I was like, what the hell's going on?
He could squeeze out his cotton napkin.
Oh my God, it was disgusting. Oh, that was disgusting. I was so embarrassed to even be at the same table. And I think I was sitting right opposite him. So I had to watch this massacre that took place, the slaughter that took place on his table. Oh my God, how disgusting. Anyway, yes. But to go back to the point, I would still prefer that to have to sit opposite a vegan.
Yeah, it's the whole principle that comes with it.
But what can Michael says I never understood why the veggie SS always try to copy meat when they go so against it. Yeah, well, this is it. They're also trying to pass it off because they think we're all going to be fooled, and that we're going to consider this stuff to be a perfect, replacement for the meat, and we're not. Not interested. A true vegan, says Rebellious Ruth, also doesn't use leather or any kind of animal product in clothing, furniture, etc. Yeah, you see, I just don't. I'm looking around now. I've got just around me. There is what do we got here? That's animal product.
There's that big stuffed bison in the corner of your study.
Yeah, that I hunted. That's correct. that I hunted in the Great American Plains. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Vutzako says, and constipation. Good point. That came later. Don't worry. That came later. God, imagine if Leigh-Ann was a vegan. Michael obviously doesn't like you very much. Do you want to give him the middle finger now, or do you want to wait?
No,
not even. Okay. Carnivores very seldom push their lifestyle. That's a good point, DK. You know, carnivores aren't really interested in what someone else thinks or eats. Only people are lower on the food chain. People who are lower on the food chain worry about what other people eat, because I think deep down inside they're worried about being eaten. I think that's where it comes. Like if
I'm scared that once we get a taste for blood and red meat, we're going to eat them too.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I can't imagine a world where I'm not allowed to eat meat. I mean, it's just, there is no system that the governments of the world could put into place, because I swear it's so important to me. I would buy cattle.
Oh my word!
I'd take over the process from the ground up. I would buy a piece of land and I would buy cattle. Don't you remember I once wanted to do that? We were talking about investments, and I said, well, in South Africa, one of the best things you could invest in is cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the story of a friend of mine who he bought a cow or a bull or whatever, and he obviously had one of each, and he bred with them. And he ended up having a small herd that stayed on someone else's farm, and he paid for the food for his share of the cattle. He still got them, and I'm sure he's doing very well out of them. Yeah, there's a way to multiply your money, and you can actually go and see it. You can see it, and one day you can eat it, which is excellent.
Look, I wouldn't be upset if certain types of meat. There's certain types of meat that I just don't even enjoy. So I wouldn't be like upset about it. But things like cheese, I mean, love cheese.
Yeah, how would you manage without that? Please, it's ridiculous. Vincent says, today is my last day of being on a carnivore diet for the last 2 months. I lost 20 kilograms. It was worth the explosive diarrhea. Nice. Not the explosive diarrhea, but losing 20 kilograms.
That sounds like a keto type diet.
Amazing. Good for you.
Jeez.
Nell Silver says exactly what they're trying to sell to us. You're going to own nothing, eat insects, and be happy. Have you seen these insect things that they're trying to shove down people's throats as well?
Even in fine dining restaurants, you get like grated worms and things like that.
Yeah. not something I'm going to go back for. If a restaurant does that to me, I'm not going to support them. I go to a restaurant and they started bringing out that shit. Sorry, not going to happen. All right, so the other two stories, because we've got some serious headlines to get to. Maybe we save those for a little bit later, because I think I've bitched and moaned enough for the first half hour of the show.
Yeah,
should we save
got
those
you
for
wound
just
up
now?
enough.
I know. Look at me. I'm sitting here. I'm so upset. Can you tell?
Chomping at the bits, drooling.
Exactly. No, it's just to me, it's total nonsense. All right, so Cosatu's called on South Africans to join a nationwide strike against the cost of living. How is a strike going to change the way things have gone up in price? Do Cosatu think that? I mean, clearly they are a one-trick pony. All Cosatu can do is strike. So they think, well, we've got this hammer, so everything is a nail. That's how they think.
Yeah, they've got to think that they have enough power to stop the Russian war, because that's where a lot of it's emanating from.
Well,
so some strike that they have here.
Yeah, they think that their strike will change the way that Russia behaves, and they also think that that our government, which put the whole country into a lockdown for 2 years, which obviously affected the economy more than any other single thing in the last 10 years. But if we strike, it'll sort that out. We can just rewind the clock and reset the economy. That's great. I don't know why anyone's listening to Cosatu, but anyway, they're expected to hold a media briefing on Sunday morning. They didn't have it in the end, to give us details of their plans for the looming nationwide strike. Ooh, we're waiting with bated breath. Cosatu's made a clarion call to all South Africans to down tools on Wednesday and push back against the government and the private sector's inaction to tackle socioeconomic challenges. Well, it's not surprising that probably the trade unions are at their weakest point in history. And I think it's great, because who the hell needs to listen to them? So Cosatu, busy making a noise about things and suggesting that the only thing that needs to be done is more strikes. Excellent idea. By the way, these idiots are still wearing their masks as well. The president, Zingiswa Losi, this is at the last media conference, which is like a couple of weeks ago, and she's still wearing a mask. I mean, that wasn't a thing for a while now.
But also, do these people that are still wearing masks, they think they're protecting themselves, but they're actually protecting everyone else, right? No one seemed to grasp that was what it was for. It wasn't to protect you.
No, I don't think they think at all. They just do what they're told, and then it's very hard for them to stop doing it. There you can see the idiot. I mean, these are the kind of people that we are required not to listen to. She's got a Cosatu branded mask. So I suppose part of the reason is she also wants to make use of it, because now they've gone and printed probably thousands of these things, had them made, and now, no one's using them anymore except her, dummy. So there is an idiot story for the morning. We always have to have one idiot story. Otherwise, really, how do you know that you're even having fun? Godongwana says that sexual assault allegations are the creations of third parties, because the Minister of Finance has been accused by a 23-year-old woman of assaulting her at a luxury lodge in the Kruger National Park. And she told the police that the minister started fondling her and directed her on what to do to his body after his wife left the room to go shopping. Ugh.
Ew.
Yeah. It's very hard to tell whether this is a true story or not, and I don't know that we ever will, because it sounds like it was only the two of them in the room. And maybe this happened, maybe it didn't, but I am starting to think that the more I hear these kinds of stories come out, it's like a 50-50. Sometimes they are, I mean, he's the Minister of Finance. So, first of all, ew, because he's an old dude, right? So if it's true, again, let's take the woman at her word. Let's say it's true that he did this. Ew, because his wife just left the room. So it's extra gross. Ew, because he's an old man, and like, really, you're a gross old man. Just stop it. If it's true. If it's not true, then I feel sorry for him, because it's like some girl who was at this game lodge. Maybe she worked. I don't know what the details are, but she saw an opportunity here to make up a story about the Minister of Finance. Either way, you know?
Yeah.
It's just
yeah, it's always there's always some suspicion when it's a person of high in a high-powered position. But the first news story that I read this morning started my day off badly, and that's that a young girl in East London went to report, or she reported to police. She opened a case of assault against her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And the policeman came to her house, picked her up, and took her to the station where it was just the two of them, and he raped her.
Oh my God.
So she's now opened a case against him. And where there's smoke, there's fire, because he's resigned. But to think, to think that that's what's going on is just atrocious.
I mean,
she's got no reason to make something like that up. Not against a policeman.
Not against a policeman, but I mean, a Minister of Finance. So it turns out that this whole thing was around a massage. He apparently gave her a 400 Rand tip for the massage. She'd massaged the wife the previous day. By the way, I don't like that all these ministers are living this life where they're getting massages and staying at luxury.
What's that?
Why don't you are presiding, Minister Godongwana. You are presiding over a bankrupt government that have no more money left in the till. You're proposing all kinds of new taxes on South Africans. That's what came up at the ANC's policy conference. You shouldn't be doing this. You should not be going to luxury lodges and getting massages. You should be in your office working until you cry. You work for the people of South Africa. We don't want to hear about you being in luxury game lodges, even if you're not getting frisky with the masseur or masseuse or whatever you call her. Right?
And that's the only reason why we're hearing about luxury game lodges and massages is because of this allegation. So you can just imagine what's going on.
As you say, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So apparently, he said he gave a tip after the massage for the masseuse to split with a colleague who massaged the wife the previous day. Minister additionally said that while giving the police a statement, he received a call from someone claiming to be a police general who said that if he gave 200,000 Rand to a certain bank account, the case would be made to disappear. So they were obviously trying to extort. They were trying to extort money out of this minister. But at the same time, he said he was with the police and they discovered that the said police general doesn't exist and reported the matter. These Africans are, which is the business the alleged victim works for, confirmed to the publication the matter has been reported and they're supporting the staff member while awaiting outcomes of the investigation. So we will see what happens. Who knows? It's too early for anyone to be making, wild suppositions on this. So those are exciting stories. There are also, this is quite silly, but it's worth having a silly story in the morning's news as well, because otherwise it's all just terribly serious. 2 men have been arrested over a stolen cargo container that's full of chocolate bars.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes.
And now I don't know if it was the stock photo that they used or if it was real, but it was like Lindt and all those good chocolates.
A good quality chocolate. I think it's a stock photo though. But the container has 1.5 million Rands worth of chocolate in it, and it was stolen from a Cape Town harbor last week. Listen, to steal a container, you need to be operating at a certain level. It's not something you can just put in your pants pocket and walk out with. It was being offloaded in Kensington in Cape Town, and apparently they loaded it onto a truck and took it away. 2 suspects aged 54 and 60 were arrested for the possession of the stolen cargo, as well as presumed home appliances. That's pretty weird. Apparently, they went to Linguletu West, where the 3 male suspects, 37, 38, and 40, were arrested. These are now other people who had the container at the end, were arrested in possession of the hijacked truck and boxes of meat, which was also valued at 1.5 million Rand. But most of this was chocolate. Now, I think, when I was a kid, I would have thought this was the greatest heist of all time. I thought this was the best story ever.
How are you going to move that much stock?
And also,
in chocolate.
you can't leave it in the sun, right? Chocolate has to, or do you think the container was refrigerated? It must have been refrigerated.
Must have been, especially if it had meat in it.
Yeah.
I wonder what the vegans would think about their chocolate being transported with meat.
So I don't know if you ever watched that ridiculous show, Storage Wars, where these people buy like a storage unit, and they only figure out what's in it once they start going through the stuff. But sometimes there's nothing that's valuable in there. Now, I wonder if it's the same for a container. You steal a container because you reckon, oh, well, this has got to, maybe it's high-end appliances, or, it's gold or something really exciting. So you're all like wound up about, ooh, I can't wait to open this. And you get there and it's chocolate, right?
Oh,
amazing.
So difficult to move.
No. Well, imagine the thrill of eating the stolen chocolate. Let us turn our attention now to Dr. Hanan Bushkin, who is, of course, our resident psychologist. He's also the person who we call on most regularly to help us figure out stuff that's going on in all of our lives. And we call this It's Going to Be Okay. And we're going to talk to Landi this morning, who sent us an email. She wants Dr. Hanan's help. So, Dr. Hanan, first of all, welcome to you. How are you this morning?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Excellent. Excellent. Doc, I'm going to put Landi on to you because this has become something which we kind of like doing. We let people talk to you and we all just eavesdrop, and maybe we glean something from what your conversation with Landi might be that helps us in our lives. And I think it's going really well on that front. And Landi, I'm glad to welcome you to the show this morning. So thank you for joining us. Go ahead and talk to the doctor.
Good morning, Dr. Hanan.
Good morning, Landi.
Yeah. So I have a big question for you. Am I a psychopath, or do I have daddy issues? Please, I'd like to read from the email that I sent you. Right. So I've had a rough year behind me, and I've been trying to self-diagnose. Right. So last year, my daughter, she had a health scare, and the differential diagnosis included a brain tumor and other debilitating diseases. I was very calm, and I simply followed procedure to find a diagnosis. I was not scared. I didn't panic. I never panic about anything, ever. Fear and panic, they lead to illogical behavior, I find. I am practical. I am not led by emotions. I thought to myself, if she dies, then she dies. What can I do about it? I love my daughter to pieces. She's an incredibly smart child, and she's easy, very easy to raise. I would cry at night at the thought of losing her, but it never occurred to me that I would not be able to live without her. And this is why I'm worried that I might be a sociopath. Perhaps I should mention that I am medically trained, and she thankfully does not have a terminal disease or a debilitating disease. Let me explain a bit about my background. My father died when he was 42. I was 9. I'm 45 now. I don't remember his face. I don't remember how he smelled. I don't remember the sound of his voice. And people tell me that this is sad, but I'm okay with this. Yeah, there's nothing I can do about it. I grew up in a wonderful home. I never wanted for anything. So here is my relationship with men. They have not been dramatic, but I realized there is a pattern. As a young lady, I would tend to go for men who were not available, knowingly so at the time or not. I've had wonderful relationships with men, but when the relationships came to an end, I moved on without any hangovers. I can handle rejection extremely well, I think. If somebody doesn't want me, they don't want me. There's nothing I can do about it. So I believe that life is the way it is and not how I would like it to be. I think this is why it's easy for me. My other concern is that I deal with patients, and people tell me sad things, and when I'm treating them, I just want them to move on. If there is a sad situation in their life, so just move on. And I feel like I can move on. Why can't you? So I am really worried, Dr. Hanan. Okay, I don't feel sad when a situation is sad. I can make myself cry when a patient is sad or crying. I think it's sad maybe that I have so little emotion. But once again, yeah, I can do nothing about it. So, Dr. Hanan, I can deal with whatever the diagnosis is. That's my question to you.
Right. So, Landi, thanks for sharing. And, there's such a misconception with regards to what is the appropriate, balanced emotional capacity for a person to feel and to express. And the truth is, we're different. We're individuals. Some people are very emotional, which can be functional or dysfunctional, and some people can be emotionless, which can be functional or dysfunctional. There's certain situations that require you to really feel your emotions and be able to connect. And there's certain emotion that requires you to be very intellectual, very logical, very headstrong and emotionless, that is way more functional than being feeling all these emotions in that particular situation. So I know from my professional colleagues in the medical field that, and since you're in the medical field too, being in the medical field, seeing people getting sick, seeing people dying, seeing people losing loved ones, makes you a little bit more jaded, a little bit more cynical about human nature, and very logical about, well, what disease is and what death is about. It doesn't make you a sick or dysfunctional person. To your question, which we'll get to in a second, do I have daddy issues? I think the best thing that you can do, and the best thing that anybody can do in order to figure out whether what they're going through is functional or dysfunctional, first of all, is not to self-diagnose. Don't give yourself a title, because you might be giving yourself a title and acting like it just to fulfill that role. So if, for example, you say, well, I must be a sociopath or a psychopath, and you give yourself that label, then you might actually act that out, which is actually not necessarily true. But the question that you want to ask yourself, Landi, is, am I functional? And the way you suss that out, the way you assess that, is ask yourself, am I getting the desired results in all the different areas of my life? How am I doing in terms of work and career? Am I reaching my goals? How am I doing in terms of financial security? How am I doing in terms of my relationship with my family? How am I doing with my relationship with my friends, with romantic partners? Am I healthy in terms of my diet, my exercise, my sleep? Those are 8 areas that you should be considering to assess whether you're doing great, whether you're doing fine, whether you're functional. But I want to highlight something quite important, and this is a fundamental principle that I teach my patients, and I want to highlight this. I've said this on the show before, but I want you to judge us as following. Every single person on planet Earth needs to be calibrated with external instruments. We all need to be calibrated with external instruments. And what do I mean by that? Pilots, for example, are trained to never trust their feelings when they fly. Pilots are trained to trust their instruments. And the reason why pilots are trained to never trust their feelings, because as we discussed many times, feelings lie to you all the time. Feelings are not facts. So pilots trust their instruments. And if the instrument says I'm veering left, then I trust that instrument, even though my body might tell me I'm veering right. If the instrument is telling me I'm upside down, I trust that instrument, even though my body might tell me I'm completely upright. So I trust the instrument. And what are instruments? Instruments are 2 things. They're people. People can calibrate us on goals and measurements. People can calibrate us on goals and measurements. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I want you to ask yourself, do I have healthy instruments that calibrate me in my world? The mistake that people make is, one, they lean on themselves to calibrate themselves, and then they end up gaslighting themselves. And the second problem that people make, or the people have, or the people express, is they lean on broken instruments. It's like leaning on your mechanic to tell what's wrong with your heart, or leaning on your doctor to tell you what's wrong with your car. You just lean on instruments that are not valid. We never talk about positive or negative feedback, because that's irrelevant. Because if all we talk about is healthy or unhealthy instruments, because if the instrument is healthy, it's reliable and valid, therefore the negative feedback is very good for me. If the instrument is unhealthy, in other words, it's not reliable or valid, then even though the feedback might be wonderful, then it's completely unhealthy for me. Imagine flying a plane and the instrument's always telling you you're upright, you never do anything wrong. That's what, by the way, we call toxic positivity, where you surround yourself with broken instruments that are always telling you that you're fine and you're doing great and you're wonderful and you're amazing. And it feels good, but what ends up happening? You crash. You keep on crashing and crashing because you're not being calibrated with accurate, reliable, valid instruments. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I'll say as follows. That everybody can say, well, I've got mommy issues, I've got daddy issues, but I wouldn't self-diagnose. But what I would ask you is the following. Do you have valid and reliable instruments in your world? That's the first question. And secondly, if the answer is no, then go and look for those reliable and valid instruments to calibrate you. And if you do have those, are those instruments giving you the feedback that you're heading in the right direction? If the answer is yes, then I would continue going as you were with your emotional capacity. And if the answer is no, then I would really learn how to access those emotions in those particular environments to make you more appropriate.
Does that help, Lundy?
That does help, Dr. Hanan. I think you're absolutely right that maybe I'm relying on myself as my instrument.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Lundy. And that's a big mistake. And that's a big mistake. And I want to tell you something. I've got a patient. She's one of the first in the world. She captains those big cruise liners. And I asked her, how do you navigate your way from point A to point B? And she said, well, I've got hundreds of instruments on board. And I said, if those are not accessible to you, what do you do? She says, well, I'll lean on the stars to navigate myself. And I said, that's brilliant. All she does is swap one instrument for another. And I said to her, what if that's not available to you? And she said, well, they would crash. She understood, as all people that know how to navigate themselves, that you should never rely on yourself, because you will end up justifying and lying to yourself, believing your own bullshit, believing your own biases to get you where you think you should go. You rely on your feelings. Do not rely on yourself, because you'll end up gaslighting yourself. Feelings are random. And feelings change all the time. You feel good, and it depends on how well you slept last night, the cup of coffee that you drank this morning, your blood sugar level, whether your dog was barking, whether the neighbor was screaming the whole night. A million things are going to impact how you feel. Don't navigate yourself by the way that you feel. Navigate yourself with external instruments.
Wow. Doc, you know that we've got to pick up this conversation at some point and talk about those people who believe that instinctively they'll tell you I have a gut feel. They'll tell you that I have an intuition, right? These are the words that people will use. And there are some people who seem to have a pretty good grip on that stuff. And they're better at trusting their feelings than others. But what you're saying is almost diametrically opposed to what those people believe is their true north, right?
So let me say this, because I think it's quite important for me to kind of put a caveat to that. You can trust your gut if you've had 100,000 hours of good, solid experience, because then your gut is based on something. Right. But when you speak to somebody that's had 1,000 failed relationships and they're leaned in on their gut to tell them whether the person in front of them is right or wrong, what are you basing your gut on? It's ridiculous. If you base your gut on 10,000 hours of good, solid experience, then I buy that. Because the gut then is based on something very solid and very foundational. But if you're basing your gut on failed experiences, what are you basing your gut on? What is this gut? What is this gut? What is this instinct? So professional athletes, for example, that have had 10,000 hours of good, solid experience can base their decisions on gut. Anybody that's had good experience can base their decision on their gut. That's perfectly appropriate. But if you had bad experience, what are you basing it on? That I don't agree with.
Well, Lundy, good luck to you. I mean, there were some things that you said there that I really felt I could I could identify with too. You know, the ideas that that sometimes you have to make yourself feel something. But as Dr. Hanan says, you know, sometimes you got to change out those instruments. Maybe seek out either someone who is actually a professional who can be more objective about these things, or start listening to a little bit of feedback from various quarters. I mean, it could be very, very interesting to hear that stuff. Anyway, Doc, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Pleasure, guys.
And
good luck, Lundy.
There we go. Nice to hear from you, Lundy. Thank you so much for your participation today. All right, Doc, we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, guys.
Excellent.
Bye.
Cheers. Wow. How's that? That's quite that's quite something.
And you know what you said is true. I knew that you would probably be listening harder. Somebody said to Sanele said Lundy is Gareth's sister. But it's so interesting that you and I are on the opposite spectrum when it comes to dealing with things with emotion and being clouded by emotion. So for me, it's mind-boggling to hear how she can get through so many things just by pushing aside that emotion. And I wonder how much of it is just protecting yourself because you don't want to feel or think about it too deeply.
That's true. All right, when we come back, we've got lots of good stuff for you, including Markets Monday with markets.com. We started this 2 weeks ago. And today we'll speak to Solomon Gundan. We'll find out from him about, the best characteristics of a trader, what kinds of things make you a good or a bad trader, also analytics, what you should look at when you're trading. These are all the things that we need to know if we want to be successful online when we're putting our money where, sometimes we're not entirely sure what we're doing. And I think it would be really great to hear from the experts on this one. That's what we'll do in the next hour. Don't go anywhere. cliffcentral.com. It is Monday morning.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
I'm gonna put it up. I think the producers have an image of it. So I think
a Veyron.
It's a Veyron. A Bugatti Veyron was in 2018. It's probably a lot more now. Was recorded as the most expensive car to hire.
Price?
335,000 rand per day.
There goes my 10 grand in my maths.
Yeah, which is why I was like, yeah, okay, times 10, no? So yeah, 335,000 rand a day to hire a Bugatti Veyron.
Well, I mean, I suppose there's not many of these around, right?
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Thomas Anders from Modern Talking knows they exist. Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet once saw an email from them. Someone who works for Rick Astley liked their Instagram post. And Chesney Hawks? Well, Chesney Hawks was just really lovely. That 80s Show meets your favorite 80s artists. Hours of interviews right now on cliffcentral.com. It's the biggest collection of nostalgia since you cleaned your childhood bedroom. That 80s Show. New episodes every Friday, live or as a podcast on cliffcentral.com.
All right. It is a Monday morning. We got lots of good stuff heading your way. We've got plenty to talk about today. And Leigh-Ann is here with us. She is rearing to go. She's got lots of cool stuff to share with us. Now, I noticed that there was a bit of a a viral episode that started. There's a podcast that I've listened to once or twice called Trigonometry. These two guys, I think they're based in the UK, but they've been interviewing a bunch of Americans recently. They most recently interviewed Sam Harris, who, as you know, I've read most of Sam Harris's work in terms of his books. Anyway, I don't read every other blog. I don't listen to his show every time, and when I have, I've always found him to be a very clear thinker. He's someone who has a tremendous capacity for logic and for reason. He makes a lot of sense. And Sam Harris has, he's also become a voice in meditation, which is his new favorite thing to do, to try and clear his mind, to make sense of things, to kind of order his world around him. And he's a good guy. I like Sam Harris very much. He makes a lot of sense. And you need to hear from people who help you to understand the world, not who make it more complicated or clutter it up with nonsense. So I was surprised.
Or calibration tools.
Right, exactly. He's one of these instruments that Dr. Hanan was talking about, because I do consider him to be a very, very smart individual. He's definitely among the great public intellectuals of our time. Anyway, he was on this podcast, and he said a couple of weird things, which just it didn't work very well with the preconceived notion of Sam Harris in my head as being this really reasonable, clever guy. He seems to have a serious mental block around Donald Trump. He seems to have an inability to think rationally around Donald Trump and anything to do with Trump. And I've noticed this is not just the case for him. There are a few people I know who are quite smart people. They are able to figure out the best path from A to B logically. But when it comes to Trump, it's like it scrambles their brain. And I wonder, I don't know what it is about Donald Trump. There's something peculiar about him that just gets people completely insane. I mean, there's this thing called Trump derangement syndrome, right? And Trump derangement syndrome is an actual, I don't think it's a psychological diagnosis, but it seems to be something that a few people, particularly in America, seem to suffer from. Whenever you bring up Trump, it's like they just suddenly go, they lose their minds and they can't behave, can't think properly, and everything becomes tainted by Trump. Now, either that is a testament to the man's extraordinary ability to piss people off, or it shows you that certain people just rub other people up the wrong way and they can no longer really apply their minds to things sensibly. Anyway, Sam Harris was saying that it would have been pretty much okay for anything to have been done to prevent him from becoming president again in the last election. He referred to Hunter Biden's laptop and said there was nothing in his mind that they could have found on Hunter Biden's laptop, even if it was evidence, hard evidence of Joe Biden being the most corrupt person. Even that, to Sam, was not enough to have been to anything was any tool that was available should have been used and deployed in order to keep Donald Trump out of office. That was the morally right thing, according to him. And this did my head in, because I suddenly thought, wow, here's a guy who I've always maintained was one of the sensible, logical, more or less morally unambiguous people in the world. And yet, this was so glaring a misstep on his part. This is the one, his own logic let him down in that discussion. I thought it was very, very strange. But again, it proves you can't really have heroes, right? Human beings are going to be fallible at this point. And even the great Sam Harris, he's tried to kind of explain himself on Twitter since then. And I must be honest with you, I can't do Twitter anymore. So I went on and I read a little bit of it. And it's not a great explanation anyway. So I suppose it proves that everybody has their Achilles heel, as Sanele says.
And is it a case of being not necessarily being pro-Biden, but just being anti-Trump, right?
He's so affronted by the idea of Donald Trump. Like he genuinely believes he's the worst person that has ever walked the earth. You listen to the way Sam, so Sam Harris, not a very emotional guy, right? Just straight up logician. And yet, this thing, you can hear the emotion start to come into his voice. He gets all fired up. He does not believe that there's anything redeeming about Donald Trump. It's weird. It's just weird. It's so unbelievably bizarre. And he's not the only smart person I know who is that upset by the mere mention of Donald Trump. Like, there are people I know who, if you even bring up his name, they really start to have a tantrum. They they behave like a kid. You've taken away their ice cream.
Yeah, as mentioned, I had family here from New York. So it's my South African aunt who married into, believe it or not, the Kennedy family, and her husband is Robert Kennedy. And yes, they are related.
Yeah,
but definitely a kind of a blue bloods family in
America. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, his brother is now retired, but he was a policeman. And that's a highly respected job there.
Yeah.
But, as soon as they arrived, obviously the mention of Trump came up. And my aunt said to me, we don't actually even talk about it. The family's quite split over. Yeah, so just rather don't mention it.
Well, isn't it amazing? I mean, this one guy, because, there have been presidents before who've done way more revolutionary things. It is something about that guy that just sets off certain people. I mean, you just said it now. There are families where you're actually forbidden to talk about him because it deranges some of the people in the family. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I suppose parallel parking makes a good point here. Trump showed just how powerful media brainwashing is. People hate him for no reason, but the reason is that they were susceptible to programming. You mentioned Trump and you know who is an android. Well, again, there's another side to the argument. Red Robin's point. Could his narcissism, arrogance, magical thinking, and compulsive lying have something to do with the resistance to him? Yes, it could, but it doesn't explain why people have such an unhinged reaction. David says maybe Donald Trump really is that shit. Sure, but I fail to see how, we've got a guy in the White House right now who does not know whether he is a teapot or a hockey stick. He is totally brain damaged and senile. He's honestly one of the most retrogressive people in terms of the diseases that are going on in Biden's head at the moment. I genuinely don't know whether he knows where he is. And you can take any random sentence from him, and it's like your grandpa's on very heavy meds at the old age home, and he's waiting for his pudding. It's just unbelievable. But somehow, all of this is to be forgiven because at least it's not Trump.
Yeah, somehow it's less scary.
Weird. The guy who didn't start a war, who we were told. Do you remember when he was voted in? Oh, he's the most unstable guy. He's going to plunge us into World War III. He's going to ruin foreign relations. He's going to mess up the entire geopolitical system. He's not a politician, doesn't understand any of this stuff. We were told it was a very, very bad thing, and that ultimately Trump's term of office would be devastating to humanity. Well, I don't know about that, because it seems to me that when he was in office, the economy was booming. Seems to me that he managed to do more to sort out the Middle East than anyone else who's come along. Seems to me that he didn't start any wars. So all of those three things have changed dramatically since Joe Biden took over, for the worse. So if you're logical and reasonable about this, is it really about him? Or do you just, I understand he's a horrible, noxious person. I get that he is, in so many ways, he's like that a bully that so many people just cannot shake from high school. This arrogant, self-assured, douchebag.
Yeah,
and
there's
hold on,
also
but on the facts, show me how he was worse. And Sam Harris can't do that. Can't even talk about him without like having a tantrum.
It's if I think about the most infuriating thing, one of the most infuriating things that Trump said that really got me was when he was on about injecting bleach into our systems. It's when somebody who's completely ignorant and out of place spreads that sort of misinformation. It's the same as where we had here our health minister telling us to eat garlic, or our president telling us to have showers. That just infuriates me. So yeah, there's no coming back from that for me. I can't trust the person again.
I think I feel that way about the media. I feel that, you know, that there was this concerted attempt by the media. And frankly, we know now that thanks to all that Russian disinformation hoax nonsense, that, you know, because we were told, and we still are told by Hillary Clinton, anyone who will still listen to her, that she won that election. So when Donald Trump says 4 years later he won the election, and of course he's going to say that. He doesn't know how to lose. I'm a winner. I'm not a loser. You know, all of that stuff. We're told that his saying he won is very dangerous and it amounts to treason, but that Hillary's still wandering around upstate New York saying that she won. That's not a problem. It's very weird. It's all very, very odd. And don't tell me that this makes sense. And this is also where, again, like someone who I really respect, this is not an idiot. Like Sam Harris is smart. And I hear him say this and I go, oof, that's where you've got a blind spot. You know, and it's the same as like in certain families, you can't mention him. Why? Because someone's going to tantrum like a child, which means they've got the blind spot. If you can't bear to hear someone's name, like Voldemort in Harry Potter, there's something wrong with you. You are not reasonable on that topic. You cannot be reasoned with, right? Anyway, I just thought it was interesting because I know lots of people who listen to us, listen to a bunch of other podcasts. Maybe you listen to Sam Harris's Making Sense. It's a very good podcast. I still think he's got an incredible insight into a whole bunch of stuff. But I don't know that he'll ever get over this or that he'll ever be a good instrument to refer to when it comes to this side of politics. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'd really like to know if you feel the same way. All right, so let's get on with some other things. Leigh-Ann told me 3 stories this morning that really pissed me off. We've talked about fake meat, but this is unbelievable. There's a phenomenally bright teenager who's in Melbourne in Australia, and she's at a private school, and she now claims that she identifies as a cat, and the school is actually supporting her in this. Is that right?
Yeah. That's great.
Identifies as a cat. All right. Let's go. Let's go, Leigh-Ann. I'm going to suspend disbelief.
It is what we thought would happen. It's the next thing from being able to identify as a boy or a girl if you're the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just recently, in fact, it was in South Africa. I think it was the Eastern Cape, may have been, where a 17-year-old boy who came out as gay, he's in the 9th grade, not 17, sorry, I think 14. Anyway,
big
he was completely chastised by his teacher in front of the whole class. She changed her lecture completely to be about his sexuality. And he went home and committed suicide. So that's at the forefront at the moment. So it just shows you how careful schools have to be when dealing with this sort of thing. I mean, where do you draw the line? You know, if someone's allowed to express that they're gay, but not that they're a cat. Now, this cat thing is interesting.
I think there's a huge difference here. I mean, I don't want to point out the glaringly obvious, but there are gay human beings. There have always been gay human beings. I think it's well accepted even by people who don't think that it's morally okay for someone to be gay. I mean, there are a lot of religious people, for example. There are gay people. We have a, you know, there's a certain percentage of the population who are going to be gay. And for that teacher to have done that to that kid, I think everybody would agree it's not right.
Yeah.
That's not right. That's very wrong. It's bigoted. It's nasty. It's cruel. It's also horrible to single out a kid at 14. Can you imagine all the peer pressure that's going on there? But it's not the same, and it's not on a a spectrum with someone who identifies as a cat. This is a very novel thing.
So it's becoming a bit of a trend in a subculture. So this student is in Melbourne, but it's been lots of reports coming out of Brisbane with students identifying as cats. So much so that these students are walking on all fours.
Mm-hmm.
They're cutting holes where their tails should come out of their clothing.
Mm-hmm.
There was one girl who screamed because the person who sat down next to her sat on her tail.
Okay. Yeah.
They're also identifying as foxes.
Sure.
It's called furries, and it is this subculture of people who identify as animals.
Yes.
And it's
always interesting to me. Don't you think it's fascinating that no one wants to be a rock monitor or a vulture? They always want to be the cute animals, right?
It's their fursona.
It's their fursona, yeah. So they never want to be the ugly animals, for starters. Second of all, we're expected to play along with them. And you say it's a subculture. I think it's a kind of attention seeking at best, and at worst, it's a severe mental illness. There's no other way to put this.
Well, the thing is, this child in particular is, I'm not sure what the medical terminology is, but she's nonverbal.
Oh, Jesus.
So already there is something behind this, and this is like her way of communicating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You see, this is like for example, the whole idea that words are violence, and we know how that can lead to things like Salman Rushdie being stabbed by some, Islamic extremist. That's that side of leftism that goes completely crazy. This part is about everything is on a spectrum and everything is socially engineered, right? Everything. So in other words, there are no biological truths. There are no diseases and maladies, and everything is acceptable. And we should all just be very tolerant and accepting of everybody's fantasy where there is a reality. Of course, realities don't exist for people who live like this. They genuinely want to live out their fantasies, and that would be fine. But they expect us to play along. They expect us to go, oh, here, kitty, 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 instead of saying, Megan, put on your jacket and go to school and learn. Nobody cares how you identify in your spare time. You can do that when you get home, and then we'll send you to a doctor, and then the doctor will give you meds to calm you down. But there's no reason in the world that we should have to accept that you think you're a cat. It's bad parenting. And it also, you notice this never happens in like poor communities. It's always in like rich, middle class or upper middle class communities where people have too much time on their hands and their lives have become boring. It's boredom. So I just don't buy this, and I can't imagine how. It's one thing to be the person who thinks you're a cat, but it's another thing entirely to be the person who accepts that and thinks, okay, cool, I'll go along with this. Because what kind of a person are you? Right?
Yeah. It's scary how we're being pushed to accept people's decisions on how they see themselves. And like you say, for them it's one thing, but for us it's completely different, Yeah, how far do we go?
Anyway, I mean, it's just, this is really interesting stuff, but it's also crackpot crazy.
No, absolutely. I'm glad we know about it, because I would maybe not be as surprised if I saw someone dressed as a cat entering the bank or whatever. But
well, if someone walked past me on all fours, I would either run and scream if it was at night, for example, and they came out of a dark alley and they were walking on all fours, or I would I would laugh. Those are the only two appropriate responses to someone who does this kind of thing. What are you meant to do?
Yeah, it's not natural
also,
to react
so
and
you
go
think
here,
you're a
kitty,
cat.
kitty.
Also, so you think you're a cat, then we mustn't teach you it. You mustn't go to school if you're a cat. You must stay at home. If you're going to be a cat, stay at home. We'll give you a saucer of milk. We'll put a collar on you, and we'll make sure we lock you in the house. And you won't go for dinner with us and all that. You've got to give up your human stuff if you're going to be a cat.
Yeah.
So no more human stuff. You don't get to brush your teeth. You don't get to choose your meal. You get cat food. I would push this to that. So if I had a kid and they were caught up in this social contagion, because that's what it is, of I'm an animal, I'd say, cool. Then you eat the dog food. Then if I see you walking on your hind legs, I'm going to give you a smack, because that's what I would do to an animal if it was like begging on its hind legs the whole time. And you will drink water from a bowl, and you will, if you're a dog, you'll sleep outside. If you're a cat, you can sleep inside, but you don't get to like have the best spot. If I want to have the best spot as the human, I will treat you as a cat. Then I'm not going to talk to you. You don't go out for dinner with the rest of the family. You stay at home. You watch how quickly that person adapts. You watch how quickly they change back to human. Please. What a lot of nonsense. And you pee outside and you take a shit in the garden.
The litter box.
Yeah, and you cover up with your you dig a hole, and then we'll see. Right?
Yeah. But it's that sort of parenting reminds me of when, well, the route that you're looking at as a parent.
Yeah. Right.
Reminds me of when my uncle was caught smoking, and my gran made him smoke the entire box until he was physically ill. It's that sort of
so you want to go through with this fantasy, cool. Then you can be a furry, you could be a cat or a dog or a bunny rabbit or whatever it is that you like, but then all those human things we're taking away from you. Sorry. Then we see how well you adapt to being a cat then. And no talking. I don't want to hear you say I'm hungry or I'm bored or I'm tired or please can I do this? You can't talk. You're a cat. You only get to meow and I get to ignore you most of the time. That's how it's going to work from now on. Let's see how it goes. You watch that person turn around like that. Be like, oh, okay, I give up on this cat thing. It's not as much fun as I thought it would be. It's pure attention seeking and it's social contagion. And there's no two ways about it. And I think, we're going through a stage now where like this kind of thing it makes people feel like they're interesting. It makes people they get a little bit of a thrill out of like being a bit different, and they've got something to contribute. My story, my lived experience, to quote the morons who use that term, my lived experience is different and unique and interesting and creative and fantastic. Yeah, sure, it is, but it's not really, because you're not actually doing the hard work of developing a personality or a character. We've discussed this before on the show. It's like a lot of this stuff is a stand-in for an actual personality, which you don't have. You haven't read any books. You haven't actually done anything. You haven't climbed a mountain or gone underwater or explored something interesting or written a cool piece of prose or, learnt how to make something with your hands. You don't have any of that. So instead
you're just copying. Yeah, you're copying another existing personality, and you're also not the only one doing it. So you're not unique. There are times when I'm just grateful that I don't have to navigate these things with children. I can just watch from afar.
Yeah. So a friend of mine sent me she sent me a podcast last night about like her husband and all the stuff that they're going through at the moment. And she's very sensible and she's got a great sense of humor. So I know that this doesn't mean that their marriage is falling apart or anything. She needed to vent. Anyway, I actually listened to it, which I know most people would be surprised that I even I even got half of that right. But I did. I listened to it, and then afterwards I sent her this voice note saying, you know what? You'll get through this. You guys are both smart people, and it's nice to hear from you, and I hope everything works out. And I said, but the only thing I could think while I was listening to your voice note was, oh my God, I'm glad I'm single. And then she replied and said, oh no, I didn't mean to put you off of like trying to get into a relationship or marriage or anything. I said, no, you're not putting me off, but you are consolidating the idea that this is a better way to go.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that crap to listen to, and I don't have to. I could have just deleted a voice note, I suppose, but it was interesting to do, and there was a little bit of Schadenfreude in me. I'm not too proud to admit, So, all right, while we're talking about all of this stuff, it would be a good idea if you have any issues that you'd like to discuss with Dr. Hanan, for example, who we had on just a little bit earlier on, you can send us an email, contact@cliffcentral.com. Maybe you've got some bizarre thing going on. Maybe you dress up as a furry. Maybe you think you're a cat. Then we get Dr. Hanan to talk to you. Or if it's something in your own relationships that you want to discuss with him. This morning we had a really interesting call from Lundy, who was worried that she might be a psychopath or a sociopath. And I don't think that she has to worry after listening to Dr. Hanan this morning. If you missed it, you can go and listen to the first hour of this morning's show. Sean says, air fryer, which means that we've got to remind people to like and subscribe, right?
Yep. Like and subscribe.
Please do that. Like and subscribe to the channel, and also comment, because apparently that also gets the algorithm all fired up. So if you comment on YouTube, which a lot of people do every morning, and if you're on the podcast apps, then you maybe want to give us a rating. And don't bother with anything except a 5-star rating. We're not interested in any of the other stuff. Rather shut up and keep it to yourself if you think it's a 3 or a 4-star. All right, we're not interested.
Yeah, it's either 1 or 5, please. Don't mess with the middles.
No, don't give us a 1, Leigh-Ann. Don't give people bad ideas. What's wrong with you? Tracy says, in their desperation to be different, they end up just being grouped together with the oddballs. Well, this is often, the story for a lot of people, I think. A lot of people are, they're just very lost. And we must not underestimate the fact that so many people don't really feel that they have a purpose. They don't have anything to contribute to humanity. They've grown up in a fast food world and a world of social media where they see other people online, and they think everyone else's life is obviously better than theirs. And it kind of gives you this isolation, this feeling of I'm not good enough. What do I have to say? What do I have to contribute? Look at how great everyone else's life is. Look at how smart everyone else is, how much money everyone else has. And then, they go down these dark rabbit holes of trying to impose, I don't know, their own fantasy on reality. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, Chris says, blame the parents, Gareth. The parents fucked this kid up, meow. I suppose so. May I suggest something to watch, everybody? This is Sanela, especially Lias. Find Untold, the girlfriend who never existed, on Netflix. Ooh, sounds interesting. Okay. We'll take a listen to that, or watch it. Someone mentioned a new series that I've got to watch. I'll try and look it up. I actually took down notes because I thought that we need to put in some new suggestions. There's nothing nicer than getting into a series and then binging it all over a weekend. So I'll try and find. I must have jotted it down somewhere. I'll find that.
I've become so impatient now that I won't even start watching something that offers up 1 episode a week.
Yeah, I need to know that there's a long. House of the Dragon started. That's the new
spin-off.
Game of Thrones spin-off. So maybe I should watch that. Because I think it starts today on Mnet. We're like advertising the hell out of it because they obviously, they need to show that they've still got some interesting programming on. So I'll take a watch. I'll take a look at that. That's it, House of the Dragon. So Wendy just reminded me. Woody, sorry, Wendy. Okay, it's time for us to get to markets.com. It's Markets Mondays. Now, I introduced you about 2 weeks ago to Solomon, and he is back today to teach us all about how to be better traders. And I think this is really, really cool because we've got to start with the right tools. And we're going to explain what markets.com is and how you can use markets.com, but also figure out from Solomon what the characteristics of a good trader are, what what sort of instruments, to use Dr. Hanan's examples of earlier, what instruments you should be using, what analytics you should put into place. And I think it's with that in mind that I now welcome Solomon Gundin. How are you, Solomon?
Morning, Gareth. Are you well?
Very, very well. It's nice to see you, and thank you for making time for us this morning. It's absolutely essential that you do this trading thing right. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and maybe you can help us figure it all out. I just want to point out quickly that we've got a special offer on for everybody who listens to this show. If you follow the link on cliffcentral.com, you can register with markets.com. When you sign up, email us an email to support@markets.com and say, we sent you, say Gareth Cliff sent me, or Cliff sent me, or whatever. You'll get a 30% bonus on your deposit, which is a nice way to start trading. Go along and do that ASAP. So whether you're a new trader looking for a safe place to start, or an experienced trader who's looking for low spreads, multi-assets, and high tech, you will find markets.com suits you perfectly. So they say that knowledge is power, and at markets.com, they strive to place that power in your hands. Through their unparalleled, comprehensive, and easy-to-use trading platform, expert insights, and research, traders are empowered to execute their strategies effectively in all market conditions. So here to tell us more is Solomon Gundin, who is, of course, MD of Finalto SA, and he is also a global market specialist, a trader, and a seasoned banker. And we're just going to say this because it has to be said, Solomon, you are not here to give us financial advice, but you are here to explain how markets.com works, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
We just have to put that proviso in place. All right.
Well done.
Yeah. It's important, because otherwise people go, oh, well, Solomon told me so. And then, they blame you because they made a bad trading decision. So let's start off with traders. I mean, a lot of people who come to markets.com will want to be traders. I've seen friends of mine who've made a lot of money on currency trading, or on crypto, or on stocks and shares in the traditional sense. How do you know if someone is a good trader, besides obviously looking at their portfolio and seeing the results?
Yeah, good question, Gareth. I mean, I'll use good trader and smart trader in probably the same context. So a good trader is always someone who's got a pre-trade and a post-trade mentality. They go through a process. It's the high probability of success that probably determines whether you're a good trader or a bad trader. Not necessarily profits, but a high probability of success. So the more times you do it, and the more success you get out of it, will probably determine whether you're a good trader. The good traders also have what they call a portfolio approach to the trading philosophy. So, for example, you put your highest amount of equity into your trading strategy or your trading plan, and then you leave a small amount in the portfolio for opportunistic moves. GameStop, Steinhoff is a good example of cases where those were event-driven opportunistic trades. And so a portfolio approach to trading is important. And I'd say the last point of a good trader is there's a psychology to trading. You need to get to the psychology of trading, because it helps you deal with profits, but more importantly, it helps you deal with losses.
Okay. All right, so that's all really good advice. And by the way, when we say profits, we don't mean PROPHETS, even though some traders will tell you that they have Nostradamus qualities. I like that. I'm also glad that you mentioned GameStop and Steinhoff, because some people have been very badly burnt. And obviously it's the pedestrians, the non-professionals, the amateurs in trading who often get taken for a ride. There's a lot of talk about the crypto markets at the moment, and how the really big players, the really smart crypto people, the people who actually know what the underlying technology is all about, that those people have not been surprised by any of these moves. And the people who've been caught with their pants down are the ones who are just kind of trying something out for the first time. Now, I suppose with markets.com, you guys have access, and you give us access to lots of really interesting info from all over the place. Is there such a thing as too much information? Is there such a thing as too much analysis? And can you get caught up in that stuff to your detriment? Or is the more you get, the better? Is that how it works?
Look, there is such a thing as too much of information. Generally speaking, as traders begin to hone in on their profession and how to trade and the assets to trade and which markets to trade, you'd find that they'll have an information ratio that's quite specific. I'd say that's not a bad idea, because most analysts will have a certain view on certain markets, and you're not outside of that norm. However, if you allow too much of information to distort your thinking or distort you from your trading plan or trading strategy, you're always going to find research out there that's going to have a contrarian view to your mindset. So yes, there is such thing as too much of information, and I would say use the information that you're aware of, that you've got a high level of confidence in, and then place that information inside of your trading strategy or your trading plan, and then execute.
All right, that's useful. That's good to know. So let's talk about analysis and analytics here, because a lot of people have these charts and graphs, and also I see lots of people putting up, virtual examples of charts, and then they've circled something, or they've shown a certain trend line, and they seem to know some sort of mathematical or algorithmic equation that will guarantee to give you the result that you want. And this is something that you can't possibly go wrong on. Analytics are part of trading. It's a huge part of trading. What functionality do you guys have at markets.com with regard to analytics and the decision-making process? Can you explain some of that to us, those of us who are not professionals at this yet, but want to try?
Absolutely. I mean, first, let me just say this, that when trading is a numbers game, let's be honest about it. And when you see your trading plan in numbers, and like you're talking about the charts, the trend lines, resistance levels, it is a thing of beauty because it's displayed right in front of you. In the past, I think you had a lot of gut feel traders. They're much older traders, but you also had slow moving markets. And so you had a lot of time you can place a position and go for a long boozy lunch and get back, and the position still holds. I think these days, with markets moving in such a dynamic way in nanoseconds, definitely you need the modeling or the technical modeling and the analytics to help your trade or guide your trade through. Now, in the markets environment, thankfully, a lot of the stuff that used to be bespoke is now become standardized. So using profit takes, resistance level, moving averages. And then you could get a little bit more complex in whether you want to use the regression analysis or some sort of mathematical modeling, which can be quite easily simulated in Excel, to ensure that the trading plan in a quantitative way is kind of approved. It's been ticked and it works.
All right. Well, the $1 million question, and for some people it might actually be worth $1 million, is what are the factors that you need to adopt when you want to implement a trading strategy? How does the markets.com trading platform assist with those factors and the strategy development process? I mean, do you have to sit down and actually plot this beforehand? Is that what's required? Can anyone do that?
Look, I'd say it's a good idea to have a trading strategy, because you're not just, like I mentioned, doing it with gut feel or waiting for the stars to be aligned and then you place a trade. I mean, that could go wrong, right? A trading strategy, I would say there's a few steps in a trading strategy. One is research and content analysis. You got to know the environment. You got to know the product. You got to know the asset. So do a bit of reading and do a bit of work. And please don't ignore the global environment, because even though you're trading an instrument of the JSE, you are still trading. It's still affected by or impacted by sentiment in the global environment. The second step is choose the asset wisely. Generally speaking, I'd say when you're choosing an asset, trade what you know or what you're aware of. A lot of traders seem to think when they start out that they're a trader of multiples. Generally speaking, most people can handle 3 assets probably at the same time, unless you're a person of great complexity in your mindset. And then if you're wired that way, go ahead and play on the platform. The next step, I'd say, have a time scale or a frequency. So in time scale and frequency, you're choosing the number of trades you put on, because remember, we're talking about day traders. And so you want to enter and exit the market at a very predefined time scale. In time scale and frequency, I also refer to the charting. Some may be 5-minute traders, others may be 15-minute traders, and there are those that will be an hour trader, depending on what your time and availability is. But if you place the trade in the chart that you know, then you know where to set resistance level, exit levels, entry levels, and so on. I'd say the next step is, once you've done that, just hit the trade on the platform. Go ahead and place the trade, because there's nothing further, there's no more analysis you can do. Any further analysis will be probably paralysis. The last two steps, I'd say, is have some sort of an exit level in place, because it's not always the case that your trade is going to go in your favor. But have a point where you don't lose all your equity and know where to move out of that. Profit take, stop loss that the platform has will give you the ability to do that. And finally, backtest your strategy. You might refine it further. You might take out certain stuff. So always go through a process of backtesting your plan.
I love it. These are very practical things that we can all do. So we put in place these steps that you've spoken about now. And I like the idea of having the stop loss and the take profit, because you can set those at whatever level you think is appropriate. You know, if you're prepared to lose 10 to 15%, then you set that stop loss there. If you want to take profit after you've made 5%, then that could be sufficient for you. But have a plan. Don't just let things go on and on forever ad infinitum, especially if you're a day trader, if you're the kind of person who's trading in and volatile things like currencies, right? You've got to have some kind of parameter. Is that right, Solomon?
Yeah, absolutely. Where you trade in high volatility assets, you've got to set your parameters probably even finer than you would in a slightly slower moving asset. So currencies, cryptocurrencies. I mean, the market is all over at the moment, with so much of stuff happening in the global environment. Whether you trade in a recessionary UK-based asset, or you trade in a inflation-linked US asset, or just trading the South African rand to dollar, it's a slightly higher volatility trade than it used to be. So absolutely, set your parameters, set your resistance levels, pick your entry levels, pick your exit levels, and ensure that your plan is kind of watertight. Now, this does not have to take copious amounts of time. You can go through this quite quickly, and as you do it more often, it becomes habitual.
All right, so one last thing from me. I mean, you are plugged into all of this. You know what's going on. You know what people are doing with their money at the moment. You know what kinds of assets they're buying, what sorts of stocks, what sorts of trading they're doing. Can you give us any kind of overall picture of where the world market is at the moment? A lot of people are saying you should just hold on to cash right now because everything is kind of unpredictable. Are there certain places where it's just, booming? Are there certain assets that people are clamoring for? What would you say the overall look of the world market is at the moment?
Good question, Gareth. I mean, if you look at what's happening globally at the moment, there's so much of stuff happening across the globe. Whether it's US midterm elections, whether it's the high inflation, low unemployment, or whether it's the UK's water crisis, energy crisis, or the Ukraine war and the impact on commodities. And here at home, our domestic economy has got so much of volatility purely because we're a commodity-based country. We're affected by international price referencing, and so there's so much of assets to be traded. I would say the assets, you could trade crypto because it has an underline of what it underpinning the war and what's happening in the war. So there's opportunity. We've seen Ethereum come off. We've seen the Ethereum trade high. I suppose you could trade gold. Gold seems to be the flavor. Gold's come off. So remember, in trading, we're not just talking about traders putting on a long position. We're talking about traders also taking a short position. As an intraday trader, you're indifferent of which way price is moving. What you want to do though is you want to get into the trade on the curve and ensure that it then results in some sort of a return. I would say in South Africa, currency traders, there's a lot of currency traders. They've done fairly well, but currency, like we've spoken about earlier on, is quite a high risk trade. Yeah. So if you think of yourself as a trader, as a trader who's got a good plan in place, but you're a beta trader, then don't go trade alpha markets, because you are there for beta returns. You are there for exchange reference returns. However, If you want to play a little bit and you think, well, I can participate and make alpha money, more money, you take on a little bit more risk, but you take more money, then absolutely go into the leverage space, go into the derivative space, go trade a little bit of options. We've seen the Reddit traders make money on a GameStop, American Airlines,
Right.
those kind of stuff, just trading on an option squeeze. So there's opportunity for alpha traders, but know what your alpha strategy is and also know what your beta strategy is.
Awesome. There's a lot for us to take in, and I appreciate your time this morning. This is great. We've got to start somewhere. And as we've said before, what I like about our audience is that they're interested in learning about all of this stuff. Maybe one of the places you want to learn about trading, you heard about how you can get into options and derivatives. You can do all of that on markets.com. You can also buy more of the traditional things. And you can trade on currencies, gold, crypto, whatever you like. Go and check out markets.com. It's a good idea for you to familiarize yourself with the platform if you haven't already. And as we said, if you follow the link on cliffcentral.com to register and send an email to support@markets.com, remind them that we sent you. Just say Cliff Central sent me. You'll get a 30% bonus on your deposit. That's a nice big bonus, Solomon. You don't say no to free money, right?
No, we don't.
There we go. All right, so go and do that ASAP. Solomon, thanks so much for your time this morning. It's great to see you again. We will talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Solomon Gundin there from Finalto, and they, of course, are running markets.com in South Africa. So go and take a look at it and try your hand. What do you got to lose? It's, well, I mean, as long as you put into play what Solomon said, then you shouldn't have any trouble. But if you're going to go and be completely silly about it, then you're going to get burnt like anything, you know. Walk down the street and buy something that you're not entirely sure of. You know, Warren Buffett, who said he doesn't buy anything that he doesn't understand. Like, he doesn't buy assets that he doesn't understand or that he doesn't use in his own life. And I mean, people are always quoting Warren Buffett when it comes to investment. It's become almost like he even gets the Churchill effect, where he gets quoted even though it wasn't him, just because it sounds like something that's smart, that he would have said. You know, everybody always goes, oh, Winston Churchill said, and some of the stuff isn't even Churchill. That happens with Warren Buffett's investment.
With Gandhi as well, a lot.
No. All right. Well, we got a little bit of time still, and I'm going through the comments. A lot of people here talking about the girl who identifies as a cat. Here's a funny point from Corona's Boring, who says, traders be following Elon Musk's Twitter feed. Oh, yeah. And we know what's happened there, right? When Elon Musk says, like, he joked the other day he was going to buy Manchester United, and then the stock price for Man U went right up. So, yes, people are watching what Elon Musk is saying. Did Gareth just misgender someone? When did I do that?
I think you called Wendy Woody or Woody Wendy.
Oh, right. That's it. Correct. Well done, Leigh-Ann. Very, very good. Yes. And then people also talking about Badlands as being something to watch. Some other comments about House of Dragons. Badlands, I haven't heard of that. Have you heard of that? You know
Badlands,
what that is?
no, but apparently the ending left everyone hanging. Says a post a little bit later than that.
Okay. Tracy says she got an email from Warren Buffett over the weekend. He's got $1.5 million waiting in a vault for her. Isn't that exciting? Nice.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Good on you, Tracy.
No, I got one the other day from someone else. I think it was some rich person who said that they also have $1 million for me. And if I just email them my account details, then they'll send the money to me. Isn't that nice?
That's so great. You know, not everyone is blessed like this.
I know. I feel very blessed. Yeah. I'm going to, obviously, I'm going to email them all my account details straight away. Because
just be transparent right from the beginning.
Seems too good to be true, so it probably is. Anyway, that was Markets Monday, which is brought to you by markets.com. They'll be back again next month. You can follow the link on cliffcentral.com to register with them. All right. We're really into September in a couple of days' time, hey? It's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah.
And then it's supposedly spring.
We've certainly been battered about with the traditional August winds this time.
Did you see that there was snow on Van Rhenen's Pass last week, this weekend, actually?
Proper snow. It's amazing.
Yeah, proper snow.
I saw a video of someone who just got a coffee and there was a Steers sign in the background, and
Mm-hmm.
it confused me because they were being snowed on quite heavily. And yeah, it was hanging off of his beanie, and he said, well, apparently it's snowing properly. It doesn't look like it's giving up anytime soon.
Yeah, this is always a very strange time of year. I remember last year I did a thing for my birthday, and it was probably the coldest night of the year. So
yeah,
I don't trust August. She's a sneaky bitch.
Ooh.
She comes with a sting in her tail. And even
Yeah.
September, frankly, I mean, it's supposedly spring day on the 1st of September. Every single spring day I can remember has been freezing cold. So
the amount of
Gareth,
times I was caught wearing a thin little frock at school with flowers in my hair, and it was freezing.
Did you also dress up for spring day? We used to do that.
Yeah.
Giga Shack wants to know, when is the Larry Elder interview? We will be putting that out tomorrow. Very excited about that. In fact, Larry Elder gave us a bit of an exclusive that he is contemplating a presidential run. So a really interesting conversation I had with him. It's about an hour long, and it's really cool. He's an interesting guy. We talked about race in America. We talked a little bit about general politics, what's going on over there, free speech, the kinds of things that I think everybody's interested in at the moment. Larry Elder, absolutely one of the most eloquent people when it comes to making sense of the US political scene. So I'm excited to bring you that discussion. It'll probably be on tomorrow, bright and early, around 8 o'clock. It should be ready to go. All right, that's all we got time for today. Have an excellent day, everybody. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. bright and early. Be good. Cheers.